did I ever tell you about the women of the village? And now her mom was a storyteller, she's a born storyteller, and I'm sitting here at 19 like, all right, T, what happened with the people in the village? And she said, the women in the village would gather at specific times to create change in the community. Whenever there was an upset, they would come together. Whenever one woman had an issue, whenever one thing went wrong, whether it was a lost child or lost child, whether it was challenges in her home, whether it was not understanding how to put the garden together, she would make a call. And I said, what was that call? Woo-doo! She said, no, goodbye, stop playing, get the lesson. I said, okay. She said they would make a call. And any woman who heard that call would come running. And I said, okay, tell me more about it, because now I'm getting interested. Like, okay, this is getting good. She said if they heard it, no matter where you were, you knew you had to answer. And one day there was a woman who made the call in the middle of the woods. She had walked and walked and walked for miles, crossing trees, standing over rocks, wading through rivers, searching for someone. Searching for anyone to help her find the child who was lost. And she kept looking, but for some reason she never sounded the alarm. She crossed over into a village that she didn't know. She walked into unknown territory, and she saw the community working, and she was frantic. And at that moment she fell to her knees. She put her hands in the air, and she made the call. She dropped her head and bawled. And as she tasted the salt of her tears going into her mouth, she felt a hand on her shoulder. And that's when I leaned in, like, what happened? What did they say? She felt a hand on her shoulder, and the shoulder and hand squeezed. And she felt another hand on her other shoulder, and that hand squeezed. And she felt a hand touch her on the top of her head, and it just pressed, just lightly. Then she felt a hand that just went down her back. Then she felt a hand go under her left elbow. And then she felt a hand go under her right elbow. She still hadn't picked up her head. And then she knew she was coming up. The women of that village heard the call and began to lift her up. Bodily lift her until she was standing on her feet. And then she looked up and she said, who are you? She didn't know these women. She didn't recognize them. But the women in that village that was unknown to her knew the call too. So when they heard it, they answered. And when she said, my child is missing, the call went up even louder. And then you heard what sounded almost like thunder that built and built and built. And as she looked around, there were women running towards her. There were women running towards them, and the crowd got larger, and the whisper started going through the crowd that there is a child who is lost. And the women spread out immediately to find the missing child. And they did. Her reminder in that moment was, I'm never to forget the call that the sisters will answer to. I'm never to forget that I'm never alone, even when it looks like I am. I'm never to forget that when I fall on my knees and lift my call and let my voice be heard, that there are women who are willing to answer that call. And over the last 14 years, I have fallen on my knees. That's right. And I didn't remember the story until this year. And I knew it was because many of you fell on your knees to get here. See, the woman who just walked off that stage fell on her knees with me 14 years ago. The woman who's sitting at that registration table with the really cute hair, did y'all see her? She picked us up. She fell down with us. See, the women who stand before you this weekend heard your call. And in the process of letting go, in the process of giving up, in the process of saying, I can't do it anymore, you heard your call. So I want you to breathe in this moment. I'm not worried about tears, and she does not have to leave the room. Because the reason she's here is to let it all out. She can't do that walking out this room. She can't do that walking out the room. We can come for business. We can come for prosperity. But what I want you to get is that she heard a call. The same way you did. And the only way that we will leave this room elevated beyond the way we came in is that you release the restrictions, the barriers, the protection, the makeup. It can run. But as long as you promise yourself that you won't leave this room the way you came in because you heard a call, just like I heard a call, then we're going to be all right.